Hi there. I'm Nikita O'Leary with Practical Talent Solutions. Our team is excited to present for you today. Practical Talent Solutions was established in 1990. We employ about 500 people. Of those, 10% hold PhDs and 25% hold master degrees. Our annual revenue is $12 million and we are seeing continual growth. This year, we have focused on opening 3 new locations, 2 here in the U.S. and 1 in France. We have a proven track record of designing world-class selection processes in the public and private sector. We at Practical Talent Solutions want to extend our deepest gratitude to everyone at Just Another Police Department, including Lawrence Braddock, for giving us a chance to assist your police department in validating your personnel selection systems. We have conducted a validation study to test effectiveness of your current personnel selection systems so that we can provide statistically relevant recommendations. Using your current selection methods, we have assessed which combination of those methods yields the most predictive power and success of candidates, increased selection utility, and mitigates adverse impact and bias. We are dedicated to improving selection systems like yours through empirical research and evidence-based best practices to ensure the highest quality of organizational achievement. My colleagues, Lauren, Brandon, and Ira have more to share on our analysis and recommendations. Here's Lauren.
In order to develop the most effective selection system for JAPD, we at Practical Talent Solutions must first understand the key knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics that a JAPD employee must possess. You can see here on this slide and the following one the results of a job analysis that we performed in order to gain a clear understanding of the KSAOs required. I won't read through each of them individually, but as you can see, we have compiled a complete list of the most important KSAOs and the predictors that can be used to measure each of them. There are a variety of ways to assess an applicant's knowledge framework. A structured and standardized interview can ask both behavioral and situational questions. That's what this B/S stands for in the interview column on this slide. And it may indirectly measure or assess many of the knowledge frameworks required for a police officer. In-basket tests and policy and procedure tests are also good for assessing knowledge frameworks. Next, we'll jump over to selection methods and criterion-related validity. In order to determine which combination of selection methods is best for your police department, we need to determine each selection combination's criterion-related validity, which is denoted by the letter R and is a measure of how well a selection method predicts a relevant work outcome, such as job performance. Models with higher R values do a better job predicting job performance than models with lower R values. We calculate R by performing a statistical analysis called a multiple regression, which determines the strength of the relationship between each selection method and job performance scores. We will be looking at 2 forms of R in this validation study: composite and individual criterion-related validity coefficients. The individual R value, also called criterion-related validity coefficient, measures the strength of the relationship between job performance scores and each selection method individually. And the composite R determines the strength of the relationship between job performance scores and more than one selection method combined. It should be noted, however, that a good validity coefficient is not the only factor which determines the effectiveness of a selection system. Other factors to consider include how much each selection method in any particular model contributes to the prediction of job performance, whether or not a selection method will lead to adverse impact, the cost of implementing each selection method, whether or not the selection method actually measures job-related KSAOs, and business constraints such as time or employee effort. I'll now pass it over to Brandon to discuss the steps we took to determine the R value for several different selection method combinations. Over to you, Brandon.
Thanks, Lauren. So the first thing we did was we ran what we call a correlation analysis. We want each selection method to contribute unique information to the model. So this correlation analysis is done to ensure that no selection method provides information to the model that would also be explained by another selection method. So because none of the numbers in the table, besides the ones that you see in the diagonal, are greater than 0.7 or 0.8 or so, we can say that none of these selection methods are correlated with each other, which is a good sign for our regression analysis. So here we have another table right here, which lists some information regarding the selection method batteries we tested. So let's go ahead and break this table down. So on the left-hand side, we have several combinations of selection methods, which we will call a model. The next column displays the regression equation determined by the regression analysis. It is this equation which will generate predicted job performance scores for each applicant. The asterisks you see in some of the equations mean that the particular selection method did not contribute a significant amount of information to the overall prediction of job performance. The next column contains the R value that Lauren was just discussing. Finally, the last column is that R value squared. This is what we call the coefficient of determination, and it tells us what percentage of applicant job performance scores can be explained or predicted by the model. As always, the higher the better. So here are some more models that we tested, and again, you could see their R and R squared values. Though some models have bigger R and R squared values than others, recall that this is not the only indicator of a good selection battery. The models with 3 selection methods tended to do a little better than the models with 1 and 2 selection methods, and the model with 4 selection methods did the best. However, when combining all 4 selection methods into one model, you get certain selection methods that do not contribute much information to the prediction of job performance.
Our research suggested interviews, general mental ability tests, and job knowledge tests can adequately measure these KSAOs, for example, critical thinking skills, good judgment, and integrity. Multiple studies found general mental ability tests to be predictive of future police officer success, even though they can cause adverse impact and differential validity. For job knowledge tests, it was found that while these tests measured job-relevant KSAOs such as memory, situational judgment, reading comprehension, and problem solving, they have traditionally been seen as a barrier to diverse police forces and may be contributing to adverse impact. We also determined that in-baskets are irrelevant for measuring the KSAOs for entry-level police officers. They're mainly used to determine managerial and supervisory success. The Taylor-Russell utility model is a method for predicting the costs and benefits of a selection battery. By using this model, we are trying to determine if a proposed selection battery can do a better job of hiring well-qualified candidates or applicants compared to not using a selection battery at all. In order to use the Taylor-Russell model, 3 elements or factors must be known: the criterion-related composite validity of the selection battery, also denoted as R, the base rate, and JAPD's selection ratio. These factors interplay in determining the success ratio, which is the number of applicants hired who are ultimately considered successful employees. We provided you a Taylor-Russell table with an R of 0.4 and a base rate of 0.4, 0.5, and 0.6, and selection ratios of 0.1, 0.5, and 0.9. In order to determine the potential success ratio for new hires in your police department, using a new selection battery in addition to the above information, we need to consider the ability of each selection method to measure the KSAOs that are most important for police officer success.
So to ensure that the selection battery we recommend for your department is legal and fair, we conducted an adverse impact analysis. Adverse impact occurs when members of one group are selected at substantially greater rates than members of another group. So if the selection rate of a Title VII protected group is less than 80% of the most selected group, the test is set to demonstrate adverse impact, and as a result, changes to either the selection methods or the selection equation must be made in order to mitigate the effect of adverse impact. So as you could see from the table, we ran an adverse impact analysis on a variety of potential selection batteries for selection ratios of 10%, 50%, and 90%. And only one selection battery passed the 80% rule for every selection situation. We next ran what we call a differential validity analysis. So ideally you want the R value that determines the relationship between job performance scores and applicant composite scores to be the same for whites and African Americans. But if the R value is different for each group, we have something called differential validity. And this is a form of test bias that could lead to negative organizational outcomes. So what we did is we ran this differential validity analysis to determine the R value for each race in your current application pool. And then we ran what's called a Fisher Z-test to determine if this difference between groups is significant. So what we found is that some of the models which produce adverse impact did not produce differential validity, and the models which did not create adverse impact did lead to a very small amount of differential validity. So the thing to know here is that the R values and the difference between the R values for each group is sample specific, meaning it only applies to the current applicant pool. As you begin to hire more people and more people apply for the police officer position, this number will begin to change. So you need to make sure that your HR department is constantly monitoring these R values. They're a function of the applicant pool and the selection battery equation. So if you notice major shifts in the R values for each group, you will need to change your selection equation, though not necessarily the selection methods used in the equation. Due to the results of our multiple analyses, we would like to formally recommend your police department use a selection battery that combines an interview, general mental ability tests, and a job knowledge test. In order to mitigate the impact of adverse impact and differential validity, we recommend using 0.5 as the weight for the GMA test, with 1 as the weight for both the interview and the job knowledge test. Reducing the weight of the general mental ability test had a positive impact on the selection ratios between whites and blacks, and reduced the between-group differences of whites and blacks of each group's validity coefficient compared to other models. Overall, this selection battery improves upon the base rate, mitigates the effects of adverse impact, and contains selection methods that measure the KSAOs required for successful job performance. While it does demonstrate some minor differential validity, we feel this could change given more applicants in your applicant pool. In order to further reduce the potential for differential validity, we also recommend targeted recruitment campaigns to Title VII protected groups like women, African Americans, and Hispanics. So that's it for our presentation today. We would like to thank you for your continued correspondence and support through this validation study. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us at our office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thanks again, and you guys have a great day.